Om Shanti. On the 18th of January 1969, I was in Agra, where Sakar Baba had sent me to have training, experience, and then see whatever would happen after that. And it was in June 68 that Baba had said, yes, I could surrender. And then it was in October that I actually went to Agra. And when I'd come to Madhuban in December with a group, then Baba had asked Jyoti to come with me to Agra. And so we were both there. And it must have been the night of the 19th, the morning of the 19th, so at about 2 a.m., the sister and the brother in charge of Agra, Mahendra Bhai, Baba would call him King Mahendra, very powerful soul, and Vimla Ben. So the two of them ran the center, and both were very creative and innovative, and so Baba used to send sometimes 3 letters a day to Agra. It was a new museum, 9 o'clock in the morning, then 12 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock. There were 3 posts every day, and very often we'd get 3 letters from Baba telling us about service and what to do, how to do it. So Baba was very enthused. So at about 2 o'clock in the morning, these two come to put the lights on where the sisters were, and then they told us the news that Baba has left. And it didn't seem real. But anyway, we then went and sat in yoga, and Mahendra Bhai was trying to contact other centers, Delhi and Kanpur. These were the places where the dadis were. So he felt that we'd be able to get clear information. He still couldn't believe that this was real. But there was just no response coming from anywhere. So we were in yoga through till the morning students started to arrive, 6 o'clock. And then after that, again, Vimla Ben told the students that this is what has happened. And again, it was just more yoga. And 8 o'clock, they both called Jyoti and myself and said, we're going to Abu because we don't know exactly what's happened. And if you both want to come with us, you can come. Because they knew that both of us had a very strong connection with Sakar Baba. There were lots of other Kumaris there, but they asked the 2 of us. And we immediately said yes. And so within an hour, we were already on our way to the station. The Agra train just had a few of us, the few Brahmins, but the Agra train used to get linked up with the Delhi train at some point along the journey. And when that happened, then there was a big group of sister teachers from Delhi in that, and they were talking together, and I won't tell you the names, though I remember the faces and names very clearly. But one of them said, a very senior teacher, maybe this is the last journey we'll ever make to Abu, because we used to go for Baba, and why would we go anymore? And another one said, I wonder what they'll do, how will everything function? So they had this sort of conversation going on, and the 2 of us were just silent. We had no idea of what to expect. And we arrived in Abu the early morning, Monday, and went up the mountain at about 6 o'clock in the morning. And when we arrived in Pandav Bhavan, they told us that there was somebody there to guide people because a lot of people were coming. And we were told that Baba was in the history hall and we could freshen up and come and have yoga or just rest and then come back, whatever. So we just freshened up and came straight back into the hall. And some of you have seen how when they've got the daddies or whoever, they put the body there in front of those big pictures. There were no gaddis or anything, but just the space. And when I saw Baba's face, it was as if Baba was resting. And I'd had a question in my mind as to how I would respond to the situation, because I'd never seen a body without a soul. I was 19. And yet when I did see Baba, it was as if Baba was just really, literally at rest. There was no other feeling from Baba at all, just a very peaceful face. And from Jaipur, they had had lots and lots of roses, red roses come. So Baba was surrounded by those roses in the casket. And it was just yoga. Down where now there's the trolley room, that area where they have the beddings, that was the kitchen. And so the kitchen, of course, was closed, and it was just hot water and milk and tea. Madhuban didn't know about coffee, but I also wasn't into coffee at that point, so it was just hot drinks available. Very, very cold, middle of winter. And some of you have been in Abu in winter time, especially up the mountain, and it's extremely cold. So they had the hot drinks there, and then whoever wanted could just go have a drink. But everything was closed, everybody was in meditation. And the place where I stayed was where they had the training center. The training center was only half built, just the ground floor was constructed. The floor up above still hadn't been constructed. You could just see the pillars there. And so a lot of us in one room, but that was the way it was. Madhuban was just simply trying to manage everything. And nobody knew what was going to happen. And so just meditation. And so the whole day, the night, and the next morning, Tuesday morning, by then it was the 21st, whoever had been up through the night or in the morning, we were all there. And then at about 7 o'clock, Lady Kumarka came into the gathering, and she sat at the front. And as she began to speak, her voice broke. And she very quickly caught herself and started speaking very normally. But meanwhile, that little break triggered a lot of tears in some of the people. But she quickly caught herself, and so then, again, everybody was very calm. And up until then, nobody had tears. Everybody was very, very calm, just in yoga. And then she told us that the message had come from Baba, that they would have the ceremony that day. And then she told us a timetable, that Baba had been very detailed in his explanation, that Baba's body would have to be put in an open vehicle so that the people of Abu could take darshan, have a glimpse of Baba, and nobody would complain that they'd never seen Baba, because generally the townspeople didn't come to the ashram. They came, a few of them, but not usually. And she gave us a full timetable, that there would be then the procession through the village, and then we'd come back, and then the ceremony would be happening. And she told us that it would be happening in the tennis court. There was no tower at that time, it was just the tennis court. So we all then prepared for that. And as we were going to go on that procession, they wanted the Kumaris to be immediately behind the coffin. And just as we were offering flowers while the body was still there on the ground. And by then it was about 12 o'clock. And literally just a few minutes before they were going to lift the body onto the lorry, Dadi Nirmal Shanta and Didi arrived. And what had happened was that when Baba had sent me with Didi in October to Jaipur and Delhi and then Agra and Gwalior, all these places, Baba had kept Didi on the move. And meanwhile, it had been Dadi Prakashmani who had stayed with Baba to manage things. And at this point, I'm just telling you the story of what I saw and experienced. I'm going to tell you a few of the details of the background later. But Didi had gone from that area to, Baba had sent her to Calcutta. And then from Calcutta they had gone on to the Kumbh Mela at Allahabad. And there was no centre in Allahabad. And of course there were no mobile phones. So wherever Ishu Dadi was phoning, there was the response that Didi has left. Didi left yesterday. Didi left this morning. Didi, they just didn't catch up until she actually reached the Kumbh Mela in Allahabad. And then she got the message that Baba has left. So they then came to Bombay and to Ahmedabad. And so literally just those few minutes, and they were able to see Baba. And then the procession went all around and came back, and they'd set up the pyre in the middle of the tennis court. And Baba's son had come from Bombay. Jagdish Bhai was there. So the Lokik son and the spiritual son, the eldest spiritual son, normally it would have been Dada Vishwa Kishore, but he passed away in March 68, so it was just about 10 months later. So the next eldest one was Jagdish Bhai. So they were both there. But the message had come from Baba, Shiv Baba, that it should be Dadi Prakashmani who should light the pyre. Now, that was totally unheard of within the Hindu culture. If you don't have a son, you would have a brother, you would have somebody male within the family to light the fire. I don't think it's ever happened in Hindu history that a woman has lit the pyre. But Dadi Kumarka was the first one to light the pyre, and then we were all given sandalwood sticks. You've seen that ceremony. And we were all standing all around where today you have the wall around the Tower of Peace. Well, there was no wall, but we were all just there. There was the garden wall where there was the history hall. Indraprasth didn't exist. That was just still garden. And at that point, everybody was there. And then Jyoti started to cry. And we were just 2-3 people away from Dadi Prakashmani. So Dadi Prakashmani called her across and just held her and kept her with herself there. Jyoti's relationship with Baba was like Brahma Baba was her guardian, officially, Lokik guardian, because her mother had arranged that when she came to stay in boarding school, in Sophia school. And so Daddy knew that, and so Daddy just took care of her. And then we'd been told that everybody shower, etc. Meanwhile, the history hall had been cleaned out, and we then went and sat in the history hall about 6 o'clock in the evening. And by then, 700 people had gathered in Abu, and the hall holds at a squash 300 people. Really, when you're sitting very close together. And then there were some people out, and the doors were open in the back veranda that's there. And there were people on both sides in the corridor standing. So a few hundred, and another 100 there. So about 700 people from all over India had arrived. And what we thought was going to be an offering of bhog, that's what we were told, that it would be an offering of bhog, and we expected that there would be some trance message after that. But in fact what happened was, and Baba always used to have the Kumaris very close to the front. So this time it was the Dadis, the bhog is here, and Dadi Gulzar is on the Gaddi. And just immediately after the Dadis, it was about 4 or 5 Kumaris, because the rest were senior teachers who had come. But so we were just there behind the Dadis. And the bhog is offered, you see Dadi Gulzar go off into trance, and then the eyes open. And it took a few minutes, I don't know about others, but for me, to feel that, is it Dadi? No, it's not Dadi. And then as the drishti continued, and the drishti continued for about half an hour, Baba just gave drishti to everybody in the hall. Baba especially gave drishti to the people in the corridors. And so it was like everyone was getting drishti. And by then it was very clear it wasn't Dadi Gulzar, it was Baba. And again, we didn't know further what would happen, whether Baba would go and Dadi would come back. But then we started hearing this whisper, and there were no arrangements. There was no mic in Madhuban at that point. Baba never used a mic, and so the only thing was a little tape recorder. And Dada Chandras quickly took the mic from the tape recorder, and you can turn it into an amplifier. But this little amplifier from the tape recorder, and maybe only about halfway through the hall you could hear, no more than that. But we were very close, so we heard everything. But even though other people couldn't hear, there was total stillness, total silence. And then that whisper that we knew afterwards so well, Baba began to speak, and Baba's first comment was, "You children are supposed to be the children of the ocean of peace, but you seem to be the children of the ocean of upheaval." And everybody just laughed. And it was like Baba wanted to release the tension and make everybody just laugh. And then Baba took us through the whole scenario for the next 50 plus years. At that time we didn't know it would be that long. But Baba said, "The commander has come to rally the troops." Basically, that was the message. And Baba knows that you all have many questions, and you're all wondering what's going to happen. But it's Shiv Baba's yagya, it's the Rudra yagya, it's not Brahma Baba's yagya. And so the yagya is going to continue until the work of establishment has been completed. And Baba then went on to say that just as when students prepare for an exam, they study the things that they have been taught already. And if Baba were to ask you, what did Baba say last week in the Murli, who would be able to remember? And so this is a time for revising all the things that Baba has told you. And so from now on, you'll be studying those Murlis and revising the Murlis that Baba had already spoken to you. The 18 chapters of the Gita have already been given to you, so that you have all the knowledge that you can study and practice. I'm giving you the summary because I've never picked up a copy of the Murli after that initial experience, but it's like imprinted in my mind, whole passages. Another one was when Baba said, when a father goes away, you don't elect or select somebody else to take his place. When a guru goes away, then they find a follower who was close and they make him sit on the gadi. But that's the guru system, and this is a family system. And so when a parent leaves, then the older brothers and sisters look after the younger ones. And so here also, your older brothers and sisters will be looking after you. And on the book, there was a silver plate with, again, red roses. And at that point, Baba picked up a rose and put it on Didi's head, picked up another rose and put it on Dadiji's head. And Baba looked around and said, does everyone agree? And everybody went like this. And then Baba said, again looked around and said, does anyone have any question? And there was just silence. And so it was like the coronation ceremony of Sangam Yug. And then Baba said, all of those who are here will be supporting you and helping you look after the family. And then at another point, Baba was saying that it'll become more and more clear to you why it is that Brahma Baba had to leave the physical form. But you can imagine that while there is a physical body, definitely that body needs to be given time. Time for rest, time for nourishment, time for preparation. And so there was always a limit of time. But now that Brahma Baba doesn't have a physical body, Baba's going to be able to be available for you at any time that you want to come and meet him in the subtle region. Another thing that Baba said was how when the sun is shining, then the stars are not visible. But the sun has now hidden himself away so that now the stars can be visible to the world. And it'll be the role of the Shaktis to reveal the Father. At another point, Baba said, Baba will come to meet you again and again through the trance messenger. Baba will come to entertain you. Baba will come to answer your questions. Baba will come to sustain you. And Baba will continue to do that whilst you still need it. And so, all of that. Then another question that Baba took up was, some of you have the question of whether you're coming to Madhuban again. It was like Baba had been listening to all the conversations. And yes, you will. In fact, this is going to become the highest pilgrimage place on earth. This is going to truly be the Tower of Peace, where pilgrims will come from all over the world to experience peace. You will wonder why they will come here. All of you will come here to have trainings, to have bhattis. Baba didn't use the word retreats, he just said bhattis. And there will be bhattis for every group. There will be trainings for the Kumaris. There will be bhattis for the mothers, the brothers, the young people. And all of you will be part of those bhattis so that then everything that you have been taught, you can start using in practical life. So it was like there was a full plan that was given for what had to happen. So that was a sort of, with that Murli, was a very long one. It went on for about 3 hours. And everybody there at that point spoke Hindi, so there were no translations or anything. But the next thing that happened was that, one other thing there, Baba told us that all of you have left your centers and come out of love, but now it's time to go back to your centers because you now understand what is happening, but the people that you've left at your centers don't know. So Baba wants you all to go back and share all this news and information so that your students understand, because it had been so unclear exactly what had happened, so it was only the main teachers who came from all over India. So I was understanding and explaining that. But I also understood later from Dadi Janki that the Dadis had been asked to stop behind, and then Baba had met with the Dadis in the following days. And what had happened was over the next 12 days, so there were 13 days of bhog, the first bhog and then 12 more bhogs. And at each bhog, sometimes Baba came, sometimes it was a very detailed, long message that would come. And they were experimenting. At one point they had Dadi Sangtri. She was one of the trance messengers. And when Baba came through her, it was just very short Murli. Then they had people like Dadi Pushpashanta, Dadi Sheelendra. So it was experimentation time. And they were experimenting with the timings. Was it was going to be in the mornings? Baba would there would be bhog or a message sometimes in the morning, sometimes noontime, and sometimes the evening. So through all of this then, finally Baba said, at the end of that period, that Baba would want to have one fixed trance messenger, and that would be Child Gulzar. And by then it was pretty clear to everybody that the capacity of the instrument was varied, and the one that was the most able was actually Dadi Gulzar. So it was like everybody was given an opportunity, but then Baba fixed it, and then they themselves, amongst themselves, fixed that morning time, so many people are working in the kitchen still preparing things for the day. Afternoon time, again, not everybody could be there, and so it would be in the evening time that everybody would be available. So from then on, it was fixed for the evening. And that first period, there was no system about how often Baba would come. Baba just kept coming regularly. And whenever there was anything, the first Kumaris Bhatti started, we'd call Baba, Baba came. When it was a closing ceremony for the Kumaris Bhatti, call Baba, Baba would come. Baba would come just like that. A few years later, some years later, 75, when a group of 12 of us came to Madhuban from abroad, about 6 people from London and a few people from Africa. Baba came just for a group of 12 people. So Baba was very available. And of course, the personal meetings were happening. But some of the background story that's interesting, and of course you understand this later on, I didn't know at that time, but what had happened was that Baba left at 9:30, and many of you have heard Dadi Kumarka share her experience of how that felt for her. But the first thing she did was to call Dadi Gulzar, and there was a train, so about 9:45, Dadi Gulzar would have got the phone. And by 11 o'clock, Dadi Gulzar was on the train to Abu. And so she arrived. And Ramesh Bhai had arrived on the 17th night because he'd been in Ahmedabad. Sorry? Delhi. Ramesh Bhai was in Ahmedabad, and on the 17th morning, he had phoned Baba to say that he'd had a meeting with the man who was the owner of the hotel, which is where we now have the museum. And Baba had given the go-ahead for two things on the 17th. One, yes, you can set up a trust, and the World Renewal Spiritual Trust was set up, because until then, Baba had always said that the Pandav government cannot register with the Kaurva government. And Ramesh Bhai understood that, but he also said to Baba that we'd had such trouble with the property in Rajuri Garden because that had been in Mama's name. And then the land had been requisitioned for the war that was happening at that point. And then Mama had left the body and there was no will. Everybody was unaware of all these external details. So there'd been this big tussle with the government to get back that land, which finally did happen. So that's where we now have the Rajuri Garden Centre. But Ramesh Bhai had been telling Baba, if we want to buy any other property, then it has to be in the name of a trust. And so then Baba had consented, and so the trust was, Baba said yes, and then Baba said yes for the purchase of the building, the hotel, and so both things happened at that point. So Ramesh Bhai was coming to Abu to give that news, and of course that was by then the 18th. And then this is the news that he got, that so he didn't actually meet Baba because he was arriving at the bus stop, no cars in those days, so he came by bus, and Baba had already flown away. But the next day, Dadi Gulzar arrived in the morning, and then Ramesh Bhai had also come, and Ramesh Bhai and Dadi Prakash Mani asked Baba through Dadi Gulzar everything step by step what should happen. And so Baba said to them through Dadi Gulzar that there should be no rush. Many of the Brahmin family would want to come, and so they should take the time, and Baba would tell them when things should happen, and so just have meditation going on. And Baba gave another instruction that there has to be permission from the government so that the ceremony can be on sacred land in Pandav Bhavan. They had asked the government for the cremation for Mama to be in Pandav Bhavan because Brahma Baba had wanted that to happen. But they didn't get permission, and obviously it's because the body had cancer and whatever, but they weren't given that permission. But again, the message came from Baba that this should happen. And so Ramesh Bhai on Sunday had gone to Siroi. If you think about the road to Abu, some of you, even when all of you went in the 70s, it wasn't a proper road. It was just a track, a dirt track. And so when I'd gone in the 60s, it was very much a very narrow dirt track. And so now we go racing up and down the mountain in 40 minutes. At that time, it used to take over an hour. And then the roads to Siroi, well, you can imagine it took the whole day basically. But they gave permission that there should be the cremation in Pandav Bhavan. And everything was happening according to Baba's instructions, step by step by step. And the other thing that they had asked Baba was who should light the funeral pyre. And Baba's instruction had been Dadi Kumarka. And so all of that happened in that way. And then when Baba met with the Dadis, Baba told them that love and all of that, but essentially the question put to Baba was, how is everybody going to get sustenance now? And Baba's reply to them was, the sustenance you have received, you must now give to others. And that's how others will be sustained. The other message two other messages that I remember very, very clearly, Baba would come through that period of 13 days and so on. And then after that period, then there were discussions in Abu about the museum, and Mahendra Bhai was put in charge of the construction of the museum. So after that, we saw him very little in Agra. He would come for a few weeks to Abu and come for a few days to Agra and then come back again. So from the end of January all the way through to May, he was basically getting that whole thing done. But one other message that came at that time that was very detailed, and it was all then through Dadi Gulzar, what she saw was this spinning wheel, and how souls were coming down and they were getting into this wheel, and once they were in the wheel, they stayed in the wheel until the very end. But there was one soul who had come into the wheel, but then towards the end stepped out of the wheel and was with Shiv Baba. And of course Baba was explaining that everybody else is within that cycle, and it was in 68 March that it had been, Baba had told the Dadis again, after the cremation of Dada Vishwakishore, they were all gathered in Bombay, and I don't know whether it was Baba who came or a trance message through Dadi Gulzar, but it was then that March 68 that Baba had revealed that Vishwakishore has taken rebirth, Mama has also taken rebirth, and they're both part of the advance party. And so by now that had been clarified, and so the only soul that was stepping out of the cycle and wasn't in that cycle of birth and rebirth was Brahma Baba. So Shiv Baba out of the cycle, and the only other one, Brahma Baba. And so when people have questions about, has Baba taken birth, has Krishna been born, that message actually explained it, that Baba was up above and then souls going home together before the new cycle started. Another very detailed Bhog message was when Dadi Gulzar was asked to ask Baba, what were your final thoughts when it was time to go? And so in trance, Dadi Gulzar's asking Baba, and Baba laughs and says, this is a question that no Lokik father has ever been asked. And Baba doesn't mind you asking, because Baba's very open with his children. And Baba then said that there were three things that happened. At first there was pain, and that's what they had seen on Baba's face. That after a few minutes, what they observed was that it was as if there was no more pain, and Baba's face had become very calm. And this is why when we saw the face, it was completely calm. But Baba said that there was the battle, the tug of war between Karma Bhog and Karma Yog. Karma Bhog, the pain, the settling of the accounts of the body, and the yoga. And Karma Yog, Yogbal one, the power of yoga one. And the second thought had been, of all the children, no one child specifically, but just the awareness of all the children together. And the third thought had been the thought talking to Baba, Baba, if you want me to come, I'm ready, but if you want me to stay, I'm ready also. And so Baba was ready for either, totally obedient. Another interesting thing that I understood many, many years later, this was in Gyansrover, and it was Daddy Jayanti, Hansa, myself, Neelu and Daddy Gulzar. In those days, Daddy Gulzar would often come to Gyansrover and be in her room upstairs and Daddy Jayanti down. And when Daddy Gulzar would come down, she would always put her head round the corner and through the door and say, Daddy, are you coming for lunch? And they'd go off to lunch together. Well, this time, Daddy called her in, and so they sat and they talked about whatever. I don't remember. We were there, but I don't remember. And then Daddy Jayanti said, I'm not going for lunch, but I want all of you to go. And so then Hansa, myself and Daddy and Neelu, we went off for lunch. And over the dining table, Neelu asked Daddy the question, Daddy, there were so many other senior trance messengers, more senior than you. How come you were asked to offer that first bhog? And Daddy laughed and said that, yes, you're right, I was the most junior of all of them. But we sat and Daddy Kumarka called us all together, and she asked Daddy Pushpashanta first, the most senior. And Daddy Pushpashanta said, Daddy, I can't. I don't think I'll be able to manage. I'll be too emotional. Daddy asked Daddy Santri, and she got the same response. And she asked Shilendra Daddy, the same response. And the last one was Gulzar Daddy, and Daddy always called a gulla flower. And so then Daddy turned to Gulzar Daddy and said, Gulla, you're not going to let me down, are you? And she said, I couldn't say no after that. And so I said yes, but nobody had anticipated that it would be Baba coming. When Daddy Gulzar, Daddy used to come to Oxford often. Like there was a period when she came nearly every year, and she loved coming to Oxford, and of course London also benefited, but her desire was always to stay in Oxford. So at one point we were talking to Daddy Gulzar, and it might have been an interview, but it was an interview with the family. And I asked Daddy Gulzar the question, did you know that Baba was going to come? How did all that happen? And she said, I was asked to offer bhog. I sat to offer bhog. Baba called me, and Baba gave me drishti. And I said to Baba, Baba, everybody's got a lot of questions, and so you're going to have to answer all those questions. And Baba just smiled gently, and then it was as if Baba put me to sleep. And a little while later, I opened my eyes and Baba's there, and I had no idea that Baba had come down. I had no idea that it had been 3 hours plus. I thought it was just a short time that I'd rested, and I said to Baba, Baba, you haven't given me answers. What am I going to tell them? And Baba smiled and said, child, I've gone down and I've met everyone and I've given them all the answers, and they'll tell you the answers. And so it was a total surprise for her also. Just had no expectation that this was going to be happening. So it's quite an incredible story. And again, afterwards things fit in and you understand, but it's part of God's plan. And Baba had purposely kept Didi traveling so that Daddy Prakash Muni would have a chance to stay in Abu with him for that space of time of 4 months. Didi had 4 years, but Daddy had 4 months. But during that time span, from October through to January, Baba was showing her all the functioning of the yajna, how Baba dealt with the office, how Baba dealt with the kitchen, how Baba dealt with the contractors, because the training center was under construction, so there was construction going on all the time, and then all of that. So, and also the finances, how Baba dealt with the finances. So Baba was explaining everything to her, so that at the point that Baba left, it was a handover to both Didi and Daddy. So it wasn't just one, but it was both of them together. And the way that Didi and Daddy handled everything after that was one of the most important things, and this is something that they've shared personally. They knew that if all the Dadis were united, then everything would be strong. And so they would have meetings. Whenever there were any decisions to be made, they would have meetings of the Dadis, because everybody would have anticipated that Didi was the most senior, because she had always played that role in the yajna right from the days of Karachi. But nobody had anticipated that Daddy Prakash Muni would be the next one. But of course, to have a young one makes total sense. But that's why everything carried on through till beyond 2007. And it was because she was young that she could carry on for all those years. But people like Daddy Nirmashanta, she was considered more senior. Daddy Brijendra, she was considered more senior. Daddy Pushpashanta, again, these three in particular, they were considered more senior, but now they saw this younger one given that role. But of course, they loved her and supported her. But the way then that Didi and Daddy managed things was always having meetings and always including this particular group, but also others within that system of how things would happen in Madhuban. So the Dadis literally were absolutely together in everything, which is what you observed. And so their unity, and if there was anything to be discussed, yes, they would discuss it, but it was always unified. So it was Baba creating that team, and it was this team then, of course, that carried the yajna all the way through. And we still have Daddy Ratan Moini, of course, but now next step. But this is why when people ask, well, what's happening in Madhuban? What's going to go on? It's Shiv Baba's yajna, and it's going to continue to do its work till Satyug is established and it's time to go home. But the speed with which drama is moving now is something that you all observe, that you all see. And so these are the sort of main elements of that whole story of the transition. And that Baba's part would continue for 49 years was just unimaginable. Daddy Kumarka used to say, the year 2000, that's it, about drama. And here we are now already 24 years into the 21st century. Let's see the drama further. Okay. Om Shanti.